or I can, whatever you prefer.
Whatever, yeah, whatever gets the most information out. That's
Okay.
whatever works and whatever's
Great.
easiest for you.
We ready?
Ready?
Okay.
A big NTCA welcome to Mac Wilkins, 1976 Olympic champion. You made 4 Olympic teams. You set 4 world records, known also as multiple Mac. 232 feet 6 inches in the discus, 69 feet 1 1/4 in the shot, 208 feet 10 inches in the hammer, and 257 feet 4 inches in the javelin. What started your initial interest in throwing?
Initially, I went out for track in 9th grade because I thought it would help my conditioning and coordination for football and basketball. And I wanted to be a miler, and I wanted to run under 4 minutes for Bill Bowerman at the University of Oregon. And so I was the tallest guy there, and the coach wanted me to throw the shot. There was no discus in junior high, and so I was good at it. And then I also ran hurdles. I got to high school, and I did the shot and the discus and ran hurdles, and I was better at throwing, and I just did what I was good at. And it could have been anything, any event, any sport, but I got caught up in the intrinsic joy of doing it, and just kept going. And for a while I felt like I was just a kid in the candy store, and I just wanted to stay there as long as I could. But I never had any expectations that I would be able to compete in college, and when I was in college I never had any expectations that I'd be able to compete after college or in the Olympic Games or anything like that.
How did Bill Bowerman influence you while you were at the University of Oregon?
I actually chose the University of Oregon because of Bill Bowerman. When I visited with him, he talked to me in a way that I felt like he respected me, and he was a straightforward guy. And I'd had a couple of experiences with coaches that were not like that, and I decided at that time that I wanted to have coaches that I kind of felt like I respected, and it was mutual and they were honest. And I knew he was known as a running coach, and I was going to be going there as a thrower, but throwers told me, well, you know, he'll get the help you need to be a good thrower. But mostly he was the guy. It was his personality and character that attracted me to Oregon. And when I was there as a freshman, I was a shot and disc thrower, but I'd thrown the javelin a little bit as a senior in high school, and he practiced with me. He coached me in the javelin Sunday after he went to church. And so he'd be out there in his suit and tie, and I'd be out there on the runway trying to run up and down and learn how to throw the thing. And I didn't think much about it, but then when spring break came around and we had our first competition, I threw 240 feet. And I thought, well, maybe I'm going to be a javelin thrower. And to this day, I believe that the javelin was my natural event. It would have been my best event if I had been able to stay with it. As a sophomore, I started the season and blew out my elbow. I didn't know enough about how to throw the javelin for the forces I was creating. I got in a bad position and detached a ligament, and Tommy John hadn't hurt his elbow yet, so they didn't have Tommy John surgery then, and certainly they probably wouldn't have had it for a college javelin thrower. Maybe, but probably not. So I finally gave up the javelin in January of '72 and went back to the discus and shot and picked up the hammer because I wanted to keep my scholarship. Throughout this time, though, Bill Bowerman was a big influence on me in that for a guy who kind of seemed like a conservative, crusty old fella because he was in the Army and so on, from Bill I picked up a couple of things. First of all, do what's right for the athlete and question authority, believe it or not, from Bill Bowerman. And those are kind of the two most important things that I got from him. Don't be afraid to do what's right, particularly for the athlete. And you know, I think that rubbed off on Pre, and certainly that's what I got from Bill.
In your mind's eye, what kind of number of services, if you have kept healthy and if you have pursued the javelin, where do you think you would have ended, distance-wise?
If I'd continued to throw the javelin, I could easily see myself becoming a world record holder in the javelin. How far over 300 feet? I don't know. I don't know.
But that was a distinct potential for you.
I think so, absolutely. And because I did 257 and I was pretty clueless. I was missing a whole lot of blocking and transferring energy.
Excellent. On your best day, standing with a standing throw, what was the distance? And on your best day, practice or warm-ups, what was your best full throw?
Shot or disc? Shot.
No, I'm sorry, discus.
Discus.
Yeah.
There was a day in 1978 where I had maybe half a dozen throws from a stand that were effortless. And I think I threw 190, 192 maybe. And that's the farthest I ever threw. Usually it was 185, 182, 180, somewhere in that range. In practice, I had a practice one workout right before the Olympic trials in 1980 without a wind, where I must have had a dozen throws between 235 and 240. So those were probably my longest practice throws, and that's unusual because I think that's the only time I had practice throws farther than my best competition throw.
Now let's talk about the shot. What was your best stand in warm-up or training versus your best throw ever, which is officially you threw 21.06.
Yeah. And so my best standing throw in the shot was about 61.6, and my best full throw then in a competition was 69.1. So that's 7.5 feet, roughly. I know I played around with the rotational shot for a few months in 77, and I think I threw maybe 63 feet, 64, somewhere in there, 19.5 meters maybe. But I know that in practice I could throw farther with the rotation than I could with the glide, and it didn't hurt my knees and my wrist as much as the glide did. So in practice my best glide was 66, 65.5 in there, and in the rotation I could throw 66.5 in practice. So I just didn't spend enough time, have enough competitions to get the competition rotation beyond the practice throw.
Makes sense. 1976, do you see that as your best year?
1976 I had great results. 1980 was probably my best year of throwing. Technically, that's when I had my longest practice. That's when I got my life record. Threw my life record in 1980, it was 232.10. 70.98. I threw that in Helsinki Stadium in the World Games with a left-handed wind. And so the discus goes out, dives, turns right over and cuts in the ground at 70.98. 1980 was my best year technically, and so on. But 1976 was my best year for I had this thing grooved, and I was very consistent. And I still had some long throws. Well, I threw 236 warming up for the qualifying in Montreal. And 230 was my first throw, and then before that I had two standing throws. So Montreal's result was kind of disappointing. But that's the way it goes.
For your long throws, what kind of regimen did you have, training regimen, leading up to those?
My life record was after the Olympic trials, and 10 months earlier I had set out my training program to throw far during the Olympics in Moscow. And I'm not sure, I think the Helsinki Games were a couple of weeks before then, I can't remember, but close enough so that based on my program for 10 months I would have been in shape to throw my best throw of the year. And without the Olympics as of what, March or February, when Jimmy Carter said they weren't going, there may have been some minor adjustments to my program to pull things up and say, the heck with it, you know, it doesn't matter. But you know, based on the last 10 months, that's about when I was going to throw far. 1976 was kind of an anomaly in that I started out with world record in April, but it was still the cycle and the season was set for late July. In following years, there were always two very important competitions. One was the national championship, and the other was whatever the big meet was, the world championships or the Olympics or something like that. And so my whole training cycle starting in October would be geared toward that. And I can't tell you specifically what I would do to lead up to it. I know that before Montreal I had my last 4 weeks of training lined out with how many throws, when I was going to throw, how many throws I would take, where the competitions were, and what I was going to focus on technically during each workout. So I had pretty much that game plan lined out, and all I had to do was execute. And that added to the confidence in the sense of, I know what I can do in the circle, and I know I have the control and the consistency to perform at this level because I've gone through this preparation of working on the weak spots, putting it all together, and
In your technical model, who are the greatest influences of your style?
yeah, initially it was Jay Sylvester. I had a coach, Frank Morris, who was in Eugene, and he worked with me in January of '72 when I put the javelin down. And he explained to me quite a bit about the concepts behind how Jay throws, or how Jay was throwing then. And that was a huge benefit to me. Big advantage and help. If I hadn't had that, I don't know how far I would have ended up throwing. After a couple of years of working with Frank, I was pretty much on my own. And in '76 and '77 and '78, I came to appreciate Wolfgang Schmidt's technique. And I thought it was very similar to Jay's, but there was a greater rotational factor to it. So those were my two role models technically. And later, I really appreciate Jürgen Schult and the way he works his right leg and the way he can sling the discus. And then there are any number of throwers where there's one or two or three factors that, ooh, that's really good. They do that very nicely. So I think appreciating the different parts and pieces of other throwers is important for understanding what you're trying to accomplish as well.
Your second throw in the final of the 1976 games in Montreal was 67 meters 50. How did that throw feel? Was the first question, and were you confident it would hold up?
Yeah, my second throw in Montreal turned out to be the winning throw. It was 67.50. The first throw, I don't know what was going on. I was in the stadium, there was no wind, and I said, you know what, maybe I should throw the thing higher. It would help if I threw it higher. I tried to throw it higher and didn't quite work out, and I threw 202, 205, 208, somewhere in there, a complete disaster. And so there was a little bit of a sense of, what am I doing here? Oh my God, you know, I'm going to drop down this hole of panic and fear and nervousness and not be able to perform. The second throw, I just decided, let's make a throw, let's go nice and slow at the start. My tendency was to go too fast, so if I slow down, usually I'd have a good throw. And I slowed down, and about halfway through it started to feel effortless, particularly in the delivery. And normally when you have an effortless throw, you're going to have a really good throw. Not always. Sometimes you can have an effortless throw and you're too high, and yeah, it's very efficient, but you don't have any power because you're too high. This one wasn't too high, and so it was 67.50. At first I wasn't sure it would hold up. I wanted to throw farther. I felt like I was capable of throwing farther. In the end, I was disappointed that I didn't throw farther. And I really felt that my performance was mediocre at best. But it turned out to be enough. So,
Was there a little scare from Wolfgang's final throw?
a little bit, yeah. I wasn't quite sure. I couldn't really tell. Didn't think it was far enough. Didn't think it was far enough, but just a little. So I was really happy, so I gave him a hug.
We've had 3 emails sent in from your fans, and we got some questions.
Oh, okay.
First one is, what cues do you use for turning out of the back of the circle and keeping on balance? And it's from Joshua.
Uh-huh. Keeping on balance as I'm turning out of the back. I would say, first I need to get on balance before I turn out of the back. So the most important thing is to get my left shoulder over my left foot, the ball of my left foot, and then go to the front of the circle. And the tendency is to go to the front of the circle before you get your left shoulder on balance. That's a difficult thing to learn, especially because most developing throwers have a tendency to go too fast with their left arm and shoulder. And so always they'll be going to the front before they get over there. So that's how I'd answer that. What are the cues? You have to see the horizon and unwind with your face and your left shoulder, making a wide arc out the back of the circle and have that arc pass over the toes of the left foot. That's real important to do.
Okay. And second one is from India. It says, hello sir, how can I improve my circle speed with the discus?
How can I improve my circle speed with the
Speed through the
discus?
circle.
Speed through the circle. Well, you can increase your speed in the circle 2 ways. First of all, you can get stronger and quicker. More probable would be to have a more efficient technique. And there's 2 things that will make you quicker through the circle. One is increase the linear force, which means the hip lean out of the back. As you drop down on your left foot, your left hip should drop to the middle of the circle. And the second thing is, if you have a wide right leg at the back of the circle, that will increase the power as you shorten it when you bring it to the middle. So hip lean and a more effective use of the right leg. Now to do that, you have to go slow at the back of the circle. You have to unwind. You have to get on balance first. And again, that's the hard thing, is to go slow and find that balance point. If you rush the back of the circle, the right leg use will be less effective, the lever won't be as long, and you won't be able to go as fast through the circle. Very important. It's very difficult. It's paradoxical in that you've got to go slow at the back to go fast in the middle and the front. And most people go fast at the back and slow down somewhat in the middle and go even slower at the front.
If you could change one thing or one aspect of your training, go back in time and change it, what would it be?
I probably wouldn't feel the need to eat so much. Eating was enjoyable, but of all of the aspects of my training, it seemed to be more of a chore than anything else. I could change my technique. There were things I'd change about my technique, but about my training, probably I wouldn't feel the need to eat so much.
What would you train to change technique-wise?
Technically, what I didn't know in the mid-'70s, what I knew in the early '80s and so on, is how to get on balance, number one, and number two, to have a orbit of the discus that will give me a high point when my arm's in the direction of the throw. If I change those two things, automatically all my throws improve 2 to maybe 4 meters. And I think that's a substantial improvement.
You're still multiple MEC. You've got a variety of interests and responsibilities.
Yeah.
At Concordia College. I've also read that you've been to Australia recently with Danny Samuels,
Yes.
their bright prospect for
Yes.
2008. Could you talk about the things that you're currently doing?
Sure. I'm involved for the last year and a half. Last year and a half involved full-time in sport. That's a major change. That gives me the time to do all these things. And so part of what I want to do is get my facility completed at Concordia University in Portland, and I view that as a resource to all American throwers at every level of development, and have programs there that help develop throwers from age 10 up through the Olympic level, as well as masters. And there will also be participation programs that we have that are more like outreach programs for kids at risk for various issues in the community. Just physical fitness and activity with throwing events and throwing things, and a lot of the things that we take for granted in our training are actually pretty good activities just for fun. They're fun, they develop strong side, weak side, strength and awareness, core strength, body balance, a lot of stuff that you don't get playing video games. And so I want to have those programs running out of my facility as well, our facility. And so, yeah, I want to have the ability to work with athletes from the top all the way down to beginners, primarily focused on American throwers, but there may be an occasion when I would spend time with a foreign athlete. As the throws coach at Concordia University, I don't go out of my way to look for foreign athletes. Even if it works out where they can come, that's great. I have an advantage in that it's an NAIA school. I don't have the pressure to score points at the Pac-10 or the NC2A regionals or the NC2As to secure my job. And so it allows me to take a longer view of the development of athletes. So it's not get them at a high level by the time they're a junior or sophomore, and there you go. And usually that's kind of a shortcut to a dead end. It's easier to take a longer progression and a more appropriate approach to developing the athlete, looking at their entire career.
On behalf of the NTCA, thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. That was easy.
I do need a photo.
Okay.
You're
Yeah.
I'm about ready
Maybe
to
you
horse
need to have some water too.
Yeah.